Okay, so gonna take a deep breath because there was so much information to be processed and refresh our minds for a bit. But thank you all for being here, and thank you all for the wonderful intro. I feel like there's already a lot of really exciting projects that I'm hearing, and I would actually really love to spend more time learning about what each one of you are working on. Really interesting stuff. So now I've basically been discovering and exploring these. I will call like we call it utopia with a quotation mark because utopia doesn't really exist, and utopia is also super personal. Right? Like my utopia, your utopia, it's not gonna be the same. But then in the end, there might be certain commonality of all of our utopians. You know, like maybe there's certain things that most people agree that like this is at least what utopia should be. So we don't really know how to call this movement. So that's why I call it these utopian societies, but you can say that they're a bit counterculture, they're regenerative, they're communal, they're collective, and then they are slightly anti-capitalistic. And then, but so this is the general kind of field that we're exploring, but for the sake of briefness, we just call it utopia for this workshop. And okay, the text again. Okay, so what does utopia mean for you? I want to leave this actually till the end because we had a lot of engagement earlier, but maybe after the end, we can go back to the slide and talk about what does utopia mean for each of us. And so now I'm gonna talk about a bit about my journey, about what inspired this whole thing. So earlier this year, I joined this desert living collective called Mars College, and then there's some Mars fam right here. And that's kind of where this project of exploring utopia has been born because I'm very used to city lives. I grew up in the city, I went to college, I got a job in tech, and then basically I have never really lived in any situation outside of the city. And Mars College is something that you will call, it's like a Burning Man hackathon for 3 months where people get together from all over the world in a piece of desert and try to build a place to live for 3 months. So in 3 months, we need to figure out like how to get power. We need to figure out how to shower, and then that didn't go so well. We need to figure out how to compost. We need to figure out food situation, how to coordinate. And there was also a bunch of us are anarchists, so it was really interesting to figure out how do you govern with a bunch of anarchists where it was like you're like literally seeing chaos emerging from structures. It was a really interesting experience. Very interesting experience, but at the same time, it was also, and it's a college. We call it a college because it's kind of like it's designed to be a skill sharing environment. So all of us, we have a different background. I have background in game design. There's people that have background in all sorts of weird stuff, from biology to programming to art, all these things. And we get together and we just share what we know to each other. So if you look at the Mars calendar, it's crazy. It's like every day there's so many workshops, so many classes, everything is free. And then we just got together and share what we know with other people. There's, people that teach biology in Berkeley, and then they just share their knowledge there for free because that's the spirit of a gift economy in a way. And for me, it was a very, I would say, transformational experience. You know how people say, oh, I go to Burning Man and now my life has changed. And that's kind of how I felt about Mars College. And one of the biggest thing I realized was like, you actually don't need to really like a lot of material wealth in order to feel super fulfilled and happy. Like at Mars, life was really rough. Like you don't really have good food. I mean, food was nice, but like the weather is not that great. You live in conditions rough. I stayed in a tent for 3 months and 2.5. There's like sandstorms coming in all the time. Your stuff is covered in sand, and it was not the most livable, comfortable situation. But we all had so much fun building together, sharing things together, and it was just like an incredible, like fulfilling experience. And that's where this project Agartha was born because Mars, we started this discussion called Decentralized Future Living. And we're thinking about, okay, what are some of the other like decentralized living conditions out there? Like maybe not as radical as Mars, but like what maybe eco villages, maybe like co-living hubs. Like who are these people doing these kind of experimental things out there? And then it was a workshop called Decentralized Future Living. And then we meet every week to talk about possibilities, whether it's nomadic, whether it's stationary, how regenerative it should be, how resilient, what kind of power. And later we decided to turn this into more of a project. And that's where Agartha was born. It's a project to explore meaningful communities. And we don't really know what this means. So we just started when we started this project, we just put together a notion of all the stuff that we were exploring from all the communities that we put together, like a giant list. And you see a massive list that has another massive list in it. So you'll find more links and all these also political descriptions and things. And then later we started to look into, co-ops and then networks and then future cities, and then also from like philosophy to ways of transportation. And basically we don't really know what we want to do outside of this research, but we just focused on research for a few months, I would say. Yeah. And then at some point we decided, well, we means really I decided that like researching is not enough. I really want to visit these communities. So I went on a long road trip in the US to visit these kind of eco-villages, African communities, DAOs. And then I went to Europe and visited a bunch of communities. So this workshop is about a lot of communities, like a few communities I visited that I really, really felt inspired about. And I would like to share these with all of you. So before that, part of the research that we were doing with Agartha, when we started to look into eco-villages, this is a statistic from the Global Eco-Village Network. And you can see these amazing statistics, like 90%, 85%, like 85% compost all their food waste. That's amazing. Like we don't do that ever in the city, And there is some, I'm not gonna go read this list, but you can just kind of read it for yourself and see like, there's actually scientific proof that eco-villages have been a really like more regenerative way of living, and people are in general happier, they feel more fulfilled living in eco-villages. And eco-villages is not really a new concept. It's been around, way before cities and things. But so at first when we were working at Agartha, we're like, wait, maybe we should just encourage everyone to move to eco-villages. Maybe that can solve a lot of problems, maybe we'll be happier, it will be regenerative. But at some point we're like, there's also like sides of like certain issues about existing eco-villages. Like a lot of eco-villages tend to have this anti-tech mentality. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them also have these spiritual ego issue where like, some eco-villages became ego villages. Certain spiritual guru showed up and be like, oh, I have the answer, give me all the wives. And so there's that sort of things. So we started thinking about, okay, like maybe it's not just eco-villages, but maybe
you want cities,
mm-hmm.
Because we have to live in cities with this massive amount of people. We don't have enough space on Earth, so
yes,
but it's how to. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like statistically, if everyone that lives in the city completely all go out to eco-villages, the globe might not also be able to handle it because we need to drive, we all need bigger space. City is efficient in a way, and that's a great point. And then there are projects that's building new cities, but those are harder because you're building a new city. And we also made a bunch of memes, just like two of the memes that we made, just trying to really advocate the idea of being the eco-village. Not the best, but so then we decided there's more on the Agartha notion if you're interested. So now, and then I kind of covered this earlier. I decided to go and explore meaningful communities. And then all of this include more than just eco-villages, but also people in the DAO space, which is a really interesting space, kind of like a space that allows internet strangers to come together and build things together. So I kind of found all these communities very interesting in their own way. And the first community I would like to talk about is City DAO. So City DAO is the first DAO to quote unquote build a city together. And they have a lot of really high profile. So it's basically, they started they started with a random guy that sent a tweet saying like, maybe we should make a DAO to build a city together. And a bunch of crazy people joined that guy. And then they decided to make this into a project, and they launched their first round of NFTs. And it was sold out in like within a few weeks. And Vitalik bought a piece of Citizen and joined the Discord and started asking questions. So is Brian Armstrong and all these other like crypto people, high level crypto people were like, whoa, you want to build a DAO to build a city? That's cool. I want to talk to you. So that's how City DAO got started. And then now they have 10,000 something global citizens. They have like 50,000 people in their Discord. There's people from Turkey, from Thailand. It's just interesting, this concept of can we build a city with a DAO? That's so cool. And for me, when I found out about City DAO, I thought it was like, wow, what an amazing project. And I went to the Discord, and the first thing I did was I saw there's an IRL channel, so people like meeting in real life. And they just messaged, hey, can we, like, I'm in LA, who's in LA? Let's meet up. And then 20 people responded to me. And then in the end, we had the first City DAO LA meetup with a bunch of random strangers that I've never met before, but we talked for like 5 hours about like the potential of future cities and the future of governance and stuff like that. And basically, and then the current community manager at City DAO, he's a very, very compassionate person. And whenever he sees people like doing these kind of stuff, he really goes out of his way to feature them and make them feel welcome and warm. So he featured me in this thing and then saying like, oh, shout out to this person for hosting meetup. And that encouraged me to just work more on the City DAO stuff, even though none of this has any sort of payment. And I started working on like design. I was like, oh, it would be cool if we can put a t-shirt like this for all the City DAO citizens. And then one thing led to another. I actually started working with City DAO people as like a designer and also a community manager. And we actually traveled to Wyoming, which is where City DAO owned their first piece of land. And we put a flag there saying that City DAO owned this land, you know? And I had no idea what to do next. But anyways, that was that part of the story. And what I thought was super strange, it was a massive organization, but that's also how DAOs work. It's very community oriented. Like I have no experience in DAOs or whatever, but I just got in and I got super passionate about the project. And people in the space saw that, and then they connect you with, you know, the people that maybe would appreciate your skill. And you end up just becoming intimate with the group and knowing the people and part of the family. And then I thought that's what DAOs really like have a lot of potential to do. It's really this explosive energy to gather a bunch of strangers from all over the world to be united around this concept and then become like coworkers and friends in a way. So and then through City DAO, I started meeting a lot of really interesting people because in the because I was working as City DAO community management person. And you start to meet people that are interested in this concept, but they're also like super crypto friendly. And then you just start to, it's just become a really interesting group of, like a really interesting selling point for people. So I met this guy called Professor Dumpster because he lived in a dumpster for a year. He's very proud of being living in a dumpster. It was a very professionally built dumpster. And now he started this company called Droop, which is, as you will see at the bottom left corner. And Droop's business model is basically, it's the Tesla for tent. So it's like a tent, but with solar panel and all the really fancy stuff in, and you can just add land to this tent anywhere you want. And Professor Dumpster happens to live in this magical place called Marfa in Texas. And it's basically what you would think like, yeah, it's land of the free where there's no building code. And a really famous artist, Donald Judd, moved into Marfa and like a random ass Texas city back in the 80s or the 60s. And then he started building art, just random art. And a lot of other artists discovered that, wait, this crazy guy is building art in the middle of the desert. Let me join them. So Marfa just slowly became this super abundant artistic town in the middle of Texas, where they're like in the middle of nowhere, where you will walk around and there's a Prada store somewhere around Marfa, but you walk around and you see random artists building art and you see people dressed weird. And then it has that sort of openness that you would see in places like New York or Berlin, but it's in the middle of Texas. So you also have like the Texan energy. And it was just such an interesting culture hub. So I would consider this to be Utopia for a certain group of people. And it was a very interesting like thing to explore for sure. And also through City DAO, I discovered this other DAO called Cabin DAO. And what I will say that they are more like they position themselves like a startup, but converting to a DAO framework. And what they do is they live in cabins and they build cabins and then they get people from all over the world to go and live in their cabins.
That's really interesting. That's probably
Wait, what? Okay, I'll continue. And they're the Land First DAO Embassy Network. So they also are building a community all over the world. And they have a very vibrant Discord server that you can join and talk with them. They also have their custom tokens. So if you work with them and then if you buy their token, you get to like have this extra layer of a more exclusive community that you can connect with. And what they do is what I will call meaningful co-living. So you can actually go to their website and book a co-living spot right now. And the rate would be just like your standard kind of like city rate, but you will be living among beautiful nature and with people that are also in this digital nomad DAO space. And Cabin also is really focused on hosting events, and they position themselves as a network state of globally connected co-living hubs. And then you can get connected with them through referral program. But they're also very builder focused, so they host these things called build weeks. So if you don't want to pay to stay with Cabin, you can join their build week, and they will cover your travel. They will like really treat you as if you're in a resort, and you help them build things. So I joined one of their build week, and we built a sauna together, and it was super fun. Learning how to, like lay the ground, lay the gravel, and they have very professional like architects in their team to teach us how things work. In the end, you get to enjoy the sauna with everyone they built the sauna with, and it was just a really incredible experience. And Cabin is originally located in Texas, but I think they're expanding their node all over the world. And they have this referral program that if you have property and you would like to be connected with Cabin Network, you can ask your property to become one of the Cabin nodes, and you will be able to access their network. And then they will help you with introduce people to come to you. And then they have a booking program and everything. They're very open. They're really wholesome people. Their vibe is more like campfire, night story, playing guitar. So strongly recommend checking them out. And what's the next one? And the next one is a rainbow gathering. So it has nothing to do with DAOs or whatever, but in a way, I think they're super related. I met someone at Cabin DAO that inspired me, saying that Rainbow Gathering is the earliest, the most OG decentralized global movement ever. It's completely decentralized. There is no central leader, and people gather from all over the world at massive amount with like a shared simple protocol. Like there's a rainbow way of doing things. There's a rainbow spirit. So I was super interested in this way. But before this, like who among us have been to a rainbow gathering or are into a rainbow gathering? Are you into rainbow gathering? Yes. Like, are you interested? Would you ever go to a rainbow gathering? Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah, because before I went, all the stuff people told me were just like, oh, this is really druggy. Oh, it's like, it's free. So a bit of a rainbow gathering. It's free. All is welcome, and it's a complete gift economy. So everyone go bring whatever you have, and you just share with people. And because it's free and open, and I was warned multiple times when I told people I'm going to a rainbow. They're like, oh, it's gonna be crazy people. There's gonna be a lot of drugs. I was stopped by a cop on the way because he was like, like he thought I was gonna be doing a lot of drugs. But when I discovered Rainbow, it was actually one of the most wholesome experience I've ever had. Rainbow has, so I went to the Colorado Rainbow, and it was the 50 years anniversary, the U.S. Rainbow Gathering in Colorado, not that far from where they had the first Rainbow Gathering. And the whole Rainbow Gathering, the whole reason they started it was like an anti-war activist protest thing, anti-war pro-gift economy experiment. And it just spiraled to be bigger and bigger. And now there's rainbow all over the world, in Europe happening, like organically, with no central leader. And when I went to the Rainbow Gathering and people discovered like, oh, you're by yourself, you're here for the first time. And then people immediately introduced me to like places that they think that will make me feel super safe. So I ended up hanging out at this camp called Instant Soup. And what they're about is we cook soup 24/7 for everyone. And it's a bunch of, and the lead of the camp, his name is Richard. And he's this like 80-something-year-old, super wholesome granddad, and that just loves to like play guitar and sing songs. And the whole camp just felt like that. Just a lot of elder people. Every day we just play guitar and sing songs and cook soup for people. And I was just like, what are you talking about drugs? This is amazing. Like, like we've been to a festival, but this is not like that. But super wholesome. And I think at July 4th was the Independence Day. It was the tradition where all rainbow gathering will get together and pray, do a silent morning and pray for world peace. So that's what we did. In the morning, nobody said a word, and everyone sit together in like circles of hundreds of people, and then just prayed for world peace. And I was like secretly crying a few times because it was a really beautiful thing to see. And and then there's no logic to this, but the next project is called Future Thinkers. I discovered them through just the research of eco-living. So what they will position themselves is kind of like high-tech, smart village oriented, like tech-oriented, they're very techno-literate, and they are also have enough eco-awareness. And they kind of combine all these concepts together, and they're working on this future smart village, where it's super eco-friendly, it's regenerative, but it's also like very high-tech driven. So I've known future thinkers from the people at Game B. So Game B, it's a philosophical network about an alternative society that we could live in. So imagine existing society is Game A. Game B, it's like a different game where we play in a more cooperative and regenerative way. And the future thinkers, their people are very connected with the founders of Game B. So before they built the smart village, they spent the last, I don't know, 5 years or something doing podcasts. So future thinkers actually have a really long and massive just library of knowledge of all these amazing speakers and talking about idea, how can we start future societies, how can we live differently. So if you're interested in learning more, yeah.
Do you know
Yeah, I don't know him, but I know of him. Yeah, he's a very good permaculture specialist.
You do?
Oh, awesome.
Introduction.
Awesome. Yeah, Joe Boer, who's like killing it in the permaculture or like agroforestry. Is that what he does? Oh, yeah. Flower! Killing the old system. From that person to James Ehrlich, who's the founder of Regen Village, and which is this other project of like super new, like avant-garde future city that's also regenerative. From like Vitalik Buterin, the founder of Ethereum, to Charles Einstein, the author of Sacred Economics, to Ken Weber, the author of Integral Studies, to Daniel Schmeckenberger, the person that started Game B. But yeah, the Future Thinkers podcast network is a very, very condensed good knowledge network, and they are making actually great progress on their smart village. But we got introduced to him when I was working at City DAO, and we did a bunch of workshops together, AMA, to talk about their project. And at the time when we were talking about the Future Thinkers project, it sounded like there's a lot of like struggles that they're going through in order to really make this project work. You know, there's things with funding, things with community, with things not being at the right place. So I immediately felt like I understood that people that are really trying to build these pioneer type of projects, it's really not an easy task because you have to kind of do like 100 tasks all at the same time. But they recently launched a trailer on what they're building. So everything they're building looks promising, and I really hope that the smart village can come right more in shape later on. And now we're going to Europe land. So this project is called Ada House, and it means Earthship in Dutch. And I discovered this from someone that worked at TDF, which we'll talk about later. But it's the first Earthship community in the Netherlands, and it was an interesting. I've always been super interested in Earthship, so I decided to visit. But as I visited this community, their whole story kind of just blew my mind. And I would say like this is a highly committed, value-aligned community, and it's mostly composed of families. So the story of how Ada House started was the founder shot an email to people saying, I think I learned about this Earthship thing. Maybe we should build an Earthship village in the Netherlands. And he sent it to 10 people, and then those 10 people sent it to more and more people, and then he started hosting a workshop, and then at his first workshop, I think it was like 80 something people showed up, traveling from all over the country, and then really, really into the idea of building Earthships. So they started grouping the idea of a bunch of people getting together, building Earthship. And in the end, what they realized that the best thing to do was for everyone to actually build it themselves. So this village, as you can see on the top left, that massive village was built by the residents, like by hand. So everyone that lives at the village helped build each other's houses. Also with like volunteers traveling from all over the globe to help them and also learn how Earthship works. And when I was talking with the residents that lived in these houses, they get actually super emotional talking about the build process because it was very hard and it was very experimental. And a few people, there's experts in the network that know how it works, but everyone else were ready to commit to learn how everything works. And the way they described it is because they built this place together as a community. They really trust each other as a community, they're living together. Like one of the residents were saying, "Oh, like my neighbors know my computer password. It's whatever. Like I build their houses. Like what could go wrong?" And they just created this highly, highly trusted and connected network. And yeah, what do you like to add?
How many people?
So I think 70 something people, but there's probably like around 20 houses, but then there's families and then they have a community house. And what's interesting is that each house hosts individual families. So it's like every family have a lot of private space. You have your own private room. You're not sharing a space with people, but then you treat each other as neighbors because and then like, you know, if you're leaving town, they can help you water your plants. You know, if they're leaving, you can take care of their kids. It's a very really nice, elegant and harmonious community places. And as I was talking to the people that lived had a house, I heard multiple times from different people saying that I think we live in paradise. And that's not something that you hear very often from people saying this, like, yeah, we live in paradise. We built this. It was very hard, but it was so worth it. And oh yeah, you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't see you.
How permeable would you say they are then to people coming in?
The people coming?
Yeah.
So they have a few. They have 2 houses. I think that's available for rental. But I think, and then they have visitors that's visiting all the time. But I think to live and co-live with them, you probably need to like visit this place and talk with them in person. And I think they will be open-minded. Yeah, like a lot of like what I did is I just shot them an email and say, "Hey, I'm coming to visit. If you guys are down to host me," and then people just responded, "Oh, we have an extra room if you'd like to stay." So they don't have an official. You can't really book a stay in an official way, but I'm sure if you talk to them and say, like, you know, if there's a reason that you like to visit and learn, people are very happy to share what they've built, and also, yeah, just like welcome people if it's a like stay, I think. And yeah, and I think it was one of my favorite projects. I think their story deserves some sort of documentary at some point. It's really, really cool. Also, really well built infrastructure. So as you all might know, Europe is going through an energy crisis right now. But when you talk to people at a house, they do not have this problem. Everyone have their own heating, their own local energy, their own water. They have local organic garden not that far away that I can go get food from. And as I was talking with, I guess the person that funded this project, what he was saying was like financially, I live way below the poverty line, but life-wise, my life is just so rich and abundant. And that really, really inspired me because like you rarely like in a way that you're actually living outside of the capitalist system, but you're like really well taken care of. Like your life is great. Like wow, like you don't hear that very often, you know. And now this is gonna be the last community that we talk about. One of my favorite, if not my favorite, is called the Traditional Dream Factory. We have a bunch of sheep here. Can we get a meh? So Traditional Dream Factory is this eco-village in southern Portugal, an hour outside of Lisbon. And I would say it's like the cutest village ever. So it's an old chicken coop that was converted into a temporary co-living situation village. And what's really special about this place is that they have these 3 pillars of ideology: regeneration, technology, and playfulness. So with regeneration, Traditional Dream Factory brought a lot of people that are actually, you know, like doing permaculture, that are doing like seed libraries, people that are really interested into like regenerating land, into planting things and studies eco-friendly initiatives. But then with the pillar of technology, they're also bringing in people that are working with DAOs, people that are software engineers, crypto people, and then to join the space and think about how we can live differently. So Traditional Dream Factory, I don't think they're a DAO right now, but they're converting themselves to a DAO. Yeah, we are a DAO. Okay, it is a DAO. And the whole internal organizational structure is very well organized. And then they're launching their token very soon, which you can use to govern and to stay. And also the whole process of joining the team and then also decentralizing tasks. Each part it's very, you know, they use automated Notion, they use Discord in different ways. But then on the other side, they also like super into this eco-friendly initiative. And the third pillar they have is playfulness, which I think is where the magic happens. Because usually I think climate awareness and then these kind of, mostly climate topics, it's usually a very heavy topic. You know, you talk about it and it's very serious and people get really, really passionate about it, but at the same time, it makes it really hard to digest. And I think a lot of times it's easy to create this segregation of climate activists and non-climate activists, because people would see climate becoming a more of a political issue, and then they see these people being really fanatic about climate and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to become one of them. But then it's not because the climate topic is not important, but it's just becoming like a very aggregated, intense topic. But at TDF, where when they really instill this idea of playfulness into their living culture, things start to change a little bit. Like you feel like this is a place where it's just safe to discuss anything you like. So even if you disagree in a political way, even if you don't know anything about regeneration, even if you never recycled in your life, but still being in this place, you are just influenced with this culture of playfulness. And it's surrounded by a sheep farm. So everywhere you go, you hear sheep mehing all the time, and it just became part of the culture. And we have business meetings in ball pits, and also just build business meeting in tree houses and draw little funky characters on people's faces. And before we have meetings and serious discussions, we'll do some sort of emotional check-in, seeing how we feel today, how do we feel good, and then all of these things, I think it's not a culture that I have observed in a lot of the other different places, and I think it's super unique. And it's actually, you can also call this a utopia for some people. And so at TDF, we started working on this handbook called Village Builders Handbook. That's what we did in the past month. I think a few of the sheeps were observing this process. So basically what they did is they got people who are interested in building villages from all over the world, mostly Europe, to be in this place and then jam on an idea to create a book that can inspire the next generation of village builders. So within 10 days, we generated about 200 pages with illustrations and content. And now we have this massive Figma file that we're ready to launch as an actual book in a week. Yeah, so it's a lot more work to do. So I, along with other people, were part of the design team. We made some of the illustrations. And this book, we have, we categorized it in different chapters, from personal regeneration, personal healing, personal development, into group regeneration, group dynamic, community building, into land regeneration, into even the legal side of things of starting community. How do you get funds? How do you distribute funds? Do you need a DAO? And yeah, this information, what do you do if you fuck up your village, and then what are some of the existing ways to fund the commons? This is actually a story that happened to one of the village. It was not a joke, because at first I thought it was a joke, but yeah, this is a book of very rich library of a lot of info from people that have been doing this kind of research, and we're gonna launch this in a week or so. So if you like to learn more about this, I will definitely talk about it in the Agartha Discord, and also follow the TDF social. We will be talking about it. And okay, so that was a load of information. Take another deep breath. How are you feeling right now? Focused? Good? Need a break? Good? Fired up? Yes. Okay. So that was I guess a good amount of the places that we visited, but there's so much more, I know you have a project outside of Berlin. I would love to visit that and learn how that works. And yes, and a bunch of people here, you mentioned this project in Egypt. And then as we started to do this research from Mars College, as we started to do these kind of research, we realized that this is already a decentralized movement all over the world. It's already happening. People have been building eco-villages for a long time, and now it's tech people are getting into the space, governance people are getting into the space, artists are getting into the space, and people start really looking, because the default living condition is just, it doesn't quite make sense. What? You have to pay how many thousands of dollars to afford an apartment, and you have to pay how much more to afford organic food? Things just start to not make sense, So we started to kind of just put a rough summary on what are some of the things that really inspired us. unreasonable wealth gap, inflation, like the things that's happening in Argentina, the things that's happening in Venezuela. It's like, how are people supposed to live? Like, you have to pay that much for a cabbage? Are you crazy? Like, I heard like people steal cabbages in Venezuela. I'm like, cabbage? That's something that we should just be able to have and grow, in our backyard. Like, this is absolutely crazy. And aside from that, there's also problems with like isolation in urban areas. As when we first started hosting Agartha workshops, random people would join in. They'd be like, "Yeah, I can't talk about this stuff with my friends. I feel really alone. I feel isolated." And I was like, "Oh man, I've been there. Yeah, it's hard sometimes." And then a lot of times it's connected with like institutionalized social spaces. Like, we start to only meet friends and family from like these institutions, schools, jobs, and if you don't have these, it's like, what are you going to do? How are you going to meet people? And then another aspect of the problem is like the climate emergency, which I don't need to talk too much because I think people here probably already know, and then the questionable qualities and things like that. So this decentralized movement, we start to observe people really want to have a lifestyle that's just more creative, more free, it's more resilient, and it's regenerative, and it's more communal. And outside of this movement, there's also another side of the interesting movement, which is, what's happening with the network state and the Web3 movement. So the network state is about creating nation state based on ideology alignment. And if you capture that in a picture, this is what it looks like. It's basically a group of people that decided to become part of this collective all over a different world. And then, you can measure them by income or whatever. But a network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition for pre-existing states. Like, whoa, diplomatic recognition. Good luck with that. Maybe one day. But this idea was developed by this guy called Balaji. He's really famous, and a lot of crypto people, a lot of city DAO people are very into this idea. And I think it's a really good ideology framework, but I think it's one of the people that were saying, I think it was you, I forgot your name. But what you were saying is like, there's people that are talking about utopian concept from like top down level, but there's also the people that's building it from the ground up. And I would see the network state as one of the top down like framework, as like a really good theoretical framework that we can refer to. But it's also, I think there's a space for the network state to be connected with like eco-villages or grassroots movements and things like that. And as I was going through into like, like kind of educating myself about DAOs, about peer-to-peer, about co-ops, I realized they're actually just talking about the same thing. Even though they have very different culture or whatever. So, and then here's proof why they're talking about the same thing. So this is a quote from Platform Cooperativism. And it's basically a business that sells goods and services through a website, a platform, and rely on democratic decision-making and shared platform ownership by workers and users. So it's basically co-ops that collectively operate some sort of digital service, you can get together and sell t-shirts and sell goods, and then you get together and sell ride sharing. And the platform cooperativism has been around for a while, and I think they have a thriving scene in New York. They supported a lot of really cool grassroots projects and organizations. And then if you go into the peer-to-peer manifesto written by Michelle Bowens, it's a mode of a relationship that allows human beings to be connected and organized in networks. And the collaboration is often permissionless. It's something you hear in crypto a lot, meaning that one may not need permission of another to contribute. The P2P system is open to all contributors, and the quality and inclusion of the work usually determined by a layer of maintenance. So in a way, peer-to-peer also means that like a bunch of people kind of have this consensus, build this collective framework on how things should work, how contribution, how do we govern ourselves, how do we contribute, how do we feature or give back to contribution. Wikipedia, for example, is a really great, messy P2P example. And it's also a mode to allocate resources that do not involve specific reciprocity between individuals. So instead of feeling transactional with like a person A or person B, it's more like everyone gives into the entity, everyone takes out of the entity. And that's exactly what the DAOs people are trying to say. So DAO is an organization that runs on blockchain protocol and circumventing the need for human intervention or centralized coordination. It's basically a DAO is a bunch of people get together and decide to put their money or their funds in one basket, and then also through some sort of governance framework, through some sort of voting framework, collectively decide how do we allocate the resource of what we put into this basket. So DAO could just be like a bunch of people get together trying to buy a basketball court or build a city or, whatever it is. But I do think that, maybe you can argue that, all of these three have like slightly different iterations, but in general, what they all believe is kind of like a community oriented, like community centered way to, and community and decentralized way to coordinate and organize ourselves. So after researching for all these insights from frameworks to actually visiting projects, we've finally decided what we want Agartha to be. And this has just been the result of the past 2 weeks. So this is super fresh, new logo, new stuff and everything. And what we want, because throughout this research, what really bothered us is that we want to provide all these free information to people, right? Like the community should be free, the information should be free, these like networks should be free. Like the fact that we're all sitting here meeting each other, maybe we'll end up working together, this should be free. Like what I really don't like about Web3 is just there's these token gated community where like, oh, if you want to meet these cool people, pay. And we really don't want to do that. But then we started to think, okay, if we don't do that, how are we going to make money to support this project? Because at some point, our savings are going to run out. We're going to go get software jobs in order to support this project. It's going to be really rough. And then later on, after reading and doing this research, we realized, okay, maybe a good way for us to fund this is to really see this as a sustainable business, but then use the sustainable business to fund free and open platforms and communities. So we call this the network state of meaningful utopian communities. And it's my pleasure to show you a pre-alpha version of our website. Shout out to Lucy for building this. So it's your gate to meaningful communities. These are buttons and you can click on them and they talk about kind of what is our ethos. We want to support, we want to think about Earth as a player. We want to build things as community-centric. We also want to be techno-centric, I would say, and then, support sovereign individuals and incorporate playfulness. And if you click explore, you'll be able to see just the map view of a few projects that we've collected. We just built this backend like 3-4 days ago, so the project's not complete. And if you click on one of these projects, and it will load with the Llama Foundation, or it's in Taos, and then you can go to the link and then visit these projects. And I think I can go into the about page to talk a bit more about like why are we building this and what's the bigger framework of Agartha. So mission is to expand the global network of these meaningful communities. And why do we need meaningful communities? We already covered this, so we don't have to talk about it too much. But we're not really another eco-village network. We don't really just want to support eco-villages, or we don't really just want to support DAOs, but we're trying to be kind of like handpick these projects that kind of are in the intersection of all these spaces. And the potential of meaningful community is that they can be communal, affordable, regenerative, sovereign, creative, and resilient. And and then the solutions are kind of already here. As you see, a lot of these projects are already super amazing. They're just not really evenly distributed. So what we want to offer, what we want to create is for people that are in any of these stages of this, from discovering communities to wanting to visit these communities, to wanting to join, to wanting to build, like we want you to be able to find support and help in the Agartha network. And all of these should be forever free. Like none of these should be token gated. Like you should just be able to come, join the workshop, go into Discord, ask questions, meet one of us personally, and maybe we can be like, oh, you should meet this person, you should meet this person and find support. And it sounds really scary because like, okay, all these things are gonna be free. Who's gonna be paid hosting these workshops, building the platform? So this is our business model. And we want to create a peer-to-peer open market and resource exchange network. Don't really know exactly how that's going to work, but maybe a custom token will come in handy at some point. But our next step is to develop a set of art merch. So we have some posters that we're making. I'm not going to release them because they're draft, but with posters with these kind of ideologies, maybe print them on t-shirt and work with like organic t-shirt printing manufacturers, use these sort of campaigns to raise funds for this project or fund continued development. I also have a background in game development. So actually for a long time, Agartha was going to be a game. So we still also have a lot of the stuff that we prepared for Agartha to develop a game. And we can also start to sell books. And then, we are also working with this other travel agency that would like to organize group trips to discover these communities. So that can be another thing. So basically, we want to have potential to support all these paid projects that generate revenue so that we can generate a capped revenue with value surplus to fund the commons. And the commons would just be the open and free software, society and software as a service.
Can you just go back? Can you read that? What does that mean?
Capped revenue. So let's say like all these projects are gonna generate revenue, like we're gonna make money from it, but it's gonna be capped. Like there's gonna be an amount of how much you can make, and then the stuff that's above that gets to be used to support the open source project. But like it's we don't really know what the percentage is gonna look like. It's still a lot to experiment. But the idea, the commons, what we call it right now, it's a society and software as a service, open and free, of a SaaS. There's not gonna be token gated community, and there's not gonna be scarce digital goods. Just an open and free software as a service. And this is the stuff that we've been done. So we have the Agartha wiki, and I would like to show you the Agartha wiki, which has a lot of content. But if you go here, we have some memes that you can look at. And we would like to maybe populate that a bit more. And it has some art that we made for, what is Solarpunk? What does it mean to be a lettuce? What does an eco-village should be? And then, for the mother, these things, maybe we'll develop them into merch at some point. And then we have like the global hubs library. That's like a bunch of hubs that we hand selected. Like MOOS is right here. There's also like baby castles, noise bridge, Utopia in different cities. This is basically what we're gonna put into our map later on. This is just a draft. And we also have a bigger, messier library, but also a bunch of just every time when people in our network mention something super fun and interesting, we just put them into this library. And then now this is just like a backlog of a bunch of things about interesting topics that we think can be helpful for meaningful communities.
So all of your emotions?
Yeah, it's in there. So if you go back to the main page, the current Agartha website, it's a bit outdated. This is the current website. Mm-hmm. And if you go into the wiki, that's just the Notion page. And the new website will launch in a few days after we bug tested everything. And yeah, we hosted Discord events. We're going to do more of that. We partnered with a lot of communities, people that are building new communities and people that have built. So built the platform, made a bunch of memes, and made the regen handbook with TDF. And what we want to do next is legal stuff. And we're gonna start hosting some cohorts. So our idea is that like we want to see how most effective can we help community builders. The community builders like yourself, like people that own land and also people that want to join projects. So we want to do some sort of maybe like massive user research and then try to put a bunch of people in a group, for people that already are building stuff, to people that are trying to learn to build stuff, to people that don't know anything about it but just want to learn, and try to put them together, engage conversation, see if they can help each other, see how successful that is. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be successful until we try. Do an art campaign with t-shirts, and we're also working on a 10-week course. So it's basically going to be an extension of today's topic, but more into the technical side of DAOs, P2P, also the power of networks of existing P2P projects. And this 10-week course, we're going to host starting next year at Mars College in person, but we will also stream that online and then put that on YouTube that anyone can kind of come and check out. And next year, sometime maybe in summer, we are going to kick off a docu-series. So basically doing road trips, visiting communities and actually shooting documentaries about them. And hopefully that can also bring awareness about the project. So a lot of stuff that's gonna happen, but we need some time to think about which one first. There's only 2 people consistently working on this project right now, very understaffed. So if you'd like to join us, this is the way to contact us. We'll be happy to hear from any of you if you have ideas, you'd like to collaborate. And yeah, our end tag is for Mother Nature and our fractal universe. So that's it about the project. Thank you very much for sticking here and listening to all these things.